The Hunting Wives begins with a girl running through the woods, frantically calling for help. Gunshots pierce the air. Then we cut back to the present. In the heart of East Texas, Sophie returns home to her husband, Graham, and their son, Jack. Their relationship is a little strained. They've only just moved from Boston about a month ago, and Sophie is still trying to adjust. She's on Xanax to help with her anxiety outbursts, while Graham seems to be a bit too controlling. Despite working in PR, Sophie is nervous that she won't be able to turn on the old Sophie charm to win over the East Texas crowd, especially at the fundraiser. When she steps outside to catch her breath, escaping the local gun fanatics, she meets an eccentric woman named Margot in the bathroom. Margot isn't shy about her body or personality. Her provocative energy immediately throws Sophie off her game. Later, Jed Banks makes a flashy entrance in a cowboy hat and quickly redirects attention to a cold case involving a girl named Casey Crummell, who was kidnapped and never seen again. Jed uses her disappearance to rally support for gun rights, claiming the community needs to protect itself from outside threats. Alongside Margot, we meet Jill and Callie, an East Texas trio with a Sex and the City flair. Margot encourages Sophie to let loose, but it's a struggle. Sophie's anxiety holds her back. To help her unwind, Margot suggests they go hunting. Yes, really. Sophie has never fired a gun before, but Margot insists. Their flirtation grows at the bar when Margot teases Sophie with body shots and lingering touches, but the tension breaks when a man, clearly familiar with Margot, approaches Sophie and offers her a drink. Outside, Sophie meets a confident teenager named Jamie, who offers her a ride home. She politely declines. Getting into a car with a stranger isn't an option. Margot ends up driving her instead. Meanwhile, we're introduced to Abby, a religious girl, and Brad, Jill's son. Abby gives Brad her purity ring as they explore a more intimate relationship. Unbeknownst to her, Brad is also sleeping with Margot. Star, Abby's mother, tries to talk to Sophie about a foundation initiative, but Sophie is whisked away by the other wives for a dinner hosted by Jed, under the guise of getting to know her. Elsewhere, Pastor Pete confronts Abby about temptation, sensing something off in her relationship with Brad. Meanwhile, someone breaks into Margot's lake house, snoops around, and leaves a disturbing clue in the bathroom. The intruder's behavior is unsettling. Margot visits her estranged brother and pays him $20,000 to stay away. He calls her Mandy, her old name, reminding us that Margot has reinvented herself completely. Later, Margot visits Callie and they kiss in the hallway, confirming their affair. But with Jed's political campaign gaining steam, Margot ends the relationship, clearly redirecting her attention to Sophie. The next morning after a night with Abby, Margot texts Brad to call things off. Brad threatens to blackmail her unless she continues seeing him. She agrees, under one condition: no evidence and complete secrecy. Sophie, meanwhile, notices the one-eyed cowboy from the bar following her. He warns her cryptically, saying she doesn't know what Margot and Jed are really capable of. Shaken, she speeds off. At the lake house, Sophie stumbles in on Margot mid-act with Brad. Margot locks eyes with her, sending a clear message. Episode 3 flashes back 6 months before the present. Rumors swirl that Casey Crummell was being held in a remote cabin. Screams are heard. Officer Salazar responds without backup and is shot. In the present, Jill is furious about Brad and Abby. Abby, frustrated, steals Brad's phone and finds encrypted messages that clearly link him to Margot. Jill later confronts Brad and warns him that Abby could get pregnant. The situation is spiraling. Margot arrives at the lake on a jet ski, flaunting her power. As a peace offering, she buys Sophie a gun and new clothes. Back home, Sophie hides the gun in her drawer. That night, during a game of "And Never Have I Ever," Callie jokingly says, "Never have I ever killed someone." Sophie responds that she once hit a pedestrian with her car. Though the case was buried by lawyers, the guilt still haunts her. Drinking heavily, Sophie loses control. Margot continues pulling her deeper, offering more alcohol, pushing pills, and making bolder advances. Meanwhile, Abby tells Pastor Pete that no one really sees her. She's just the poor girl in a rich town. But when Pete confronts her about Brad, she storms off. Later that night, Margot kisses both Jamie and Sophie during a game of spin the bottle. Sophie is too intoxicated to stop anything. The next morning, she wakes up alone on the dock with 5 misheard calls from Graham. As she drives home, she sees police lights flashing in the woods. Abby has been shot. Back home, Sophie makes a chilling discovery. Her gun is missing. Episode 4 opens with Margot visiting Jill. Jill is strangely calm, considering the tragedy. Margot urges her to get a ruthless lawyer. This is now a murder investigation, and they need to protect themselves. Margot also wants to secure her secret with Brad. She heads upstairs to talk to him, really to make sure their stories align. Sophie, meanwhile, returns to the lake house looking for answers. She finds Margot's underwear stuffed in the couch cushions and pockets it, less out of curiosity, more in a desperate search for her missing weapon. Back at the station, Officer Salazar shows Flynn something disturbing. Abby's purity ring is missing from her body. Flynn believes it's a sign. This was a crime of passion. Brad's official statement is that he was grounded and at home all night with Jill, watching TV. Salazar is shocked that the police, particularly Johnny, don't press him harder or dig deeper into his alibi. Meanwhile, Jed uses the tragedy to his advantage. He cozies up to star for PR photos and then hijacks the vigil to make a political speech. With lights flashing and cameras rolling, he announces his candidacy for governor. But just as he's soaking in the moment, the police arrive and cause a scene. They arrest Sophie. A detective in Winsboro has recovered Sophie's missing gun. That same gun was linked to a shootout. And worse, it's the weapon that killed Abby Jackson. Sophie is taken to the station and questioned. Her only alibi is Margot, who confirms they stayed together at the lake house following the hunting incident. But even with that, the evidence is stacked against her. Jed, furious that Sophie's arrest overshadowed his big announcement, is visibly upset. Meanwhile, the other women whisper among themselves, each playing their own angle. Sophie returns home and confesses to Graham that she blacked out after heavy drinking. She doesn't mention cheating, but Graham clearly sees through the lies and isn't happy about her secrecy. Elsewhere, Pete obsessively refreshes social media feeds while Brad confronts Jamie at the basketball court. Brad is consumed with guilt. Jamie threatens to tell the truth about where they were that night. To keep him quiet, Jill steps in. She offers Jamie a $50,000 scholarship as hush money, promising to keep it in the family. At the station, Margot and Jed give their statements. Margot claims she took a Xanax and left around 10:30 p.m. for a family emergency, leaving Sophie alone. Her story checks out, or so it seems. At Abby's funeral, Pete lingers in the shadows. Later, in a disturbing moment, he offers a ride to one of Abby's young family members, just after obsessively scrolling through her photos online. The whole thing feels off. Sophie, filled with rage, leaves Margot a voicemail, accusing her of being sick and manipulative. Margot wastes no time using this against her. She plays the message for Johnny, throwing Sophie under the bus. In the dead of night, Jed's ex-wife calls Sophie. Her tone is urgent. She tells Sophie to be smarter. She knows Margot's behind the framing and hints that Kyle, Margot's brother, is involved. She gives Sophie the address to Kyle's place. When Sophie arrives, Kyle is erratic. Still, she gathers a few key pieces of information. Elsewhere, Margot confronts Brad. He tells her Jill has been acting strange. Margot urges him to snoop, check Jill's phone, her camera roll, but the passwords have all been changed. Brad checks the car's sat-nav and finds that all trip logs have been deleted. Salazar's investigation continues. She zeroes in on Pete and notices that he's been drinking. When he opens his glove box, she sees cinnamon chewing gum, the same kind found at the Cromwell cabin shootout. The connection is made. Pete panics and drives off. Police intercept him just outside of town. He steps out, cradles a handgun, and shoots himself. After the gunshot, Salazar hears banging from a U-Haul's rear compartment. Inside, she finds Nina, alive, tied up. But that's not all. Both are taken to the hospital. Back at the station, Johnny brings Sophie in for questioning. She insists she never met Abby. But Johnny has evidence. A trail camera in the woods showing Sophie in a heated confrontation with her. With no good explanation, Sophie is arrested for murder. Still, Salazar isn't convinced. Something doesn't add up. She keeps digging. Meanwhile, Callie and Margot visit Jill to straighten things out. But when they enter her kitchen, they find Star dead. Jill, frantic, claims it was self-defense and begs them not to involve Johnny. Callie has heard enough. Calmly, she lifts the gun and shoots Jill. Episode 8 begins with the fallout from Jill and Star's deaths. Margot, Brad, Callie, and the others quickly turn on Jill, making her the scapegoat. The police don't seem eager to fight it. Johnny speaks with the DA and agrees to close the case, letting Jill take the fall for everything. But Salazar isn't buying it. She's not 100% convinced. Meanwhile, Callie suddenly becomes a local hero. She's praised for her bravery, even appearing on a crime show as a heroic savior. Later at a cafe, Callie confesses her love for Margot, but Margot shuts it down. She's not in love anymore. When Callie says, "I see you," something clicks for Margot. She realizes Callie was the blackmailer all along. Callie says it was a low moment, but it's clear the tension runs deeper than that. Sophie heads home and finds Graham waiting. They talk. She tells him they need a break. She has to figure herself out. Then she heads straight to Margot's, and they have sex. In the bathroom, Sophie spots tampons in the drawer. Odd, considering Margot said in episode 1 she couldn't use them. A troubling thought begins to form. Could it be that Margot was the one who was pregnant? Looking for answers, Sophie visits Brad. She asks about Abby's abortion, but Brad says Abby was never pregnant. It was Margot all along. Sophie seeks out the one-eyed man. He reveals that Margot's father is actually a doctor, the same one who backed up their alibi. It all starts to fall into place. Margot and Kyle weren't even there that night. The doctor covered for them. He was also the one who performed Margot's abortion. Sophie confronts Margot. She believes that Abby discovered the truth about Margot's pregnancy and planned to expose her. Margot used Kyle to cover it up, and her father's medical credibility to tie the story together. Margot killed Abby. Then she passed Sophie's gun to Kyle, who sold it at a shop in Louisiana. Back home, Sophie confesses to Graham that she cheated with Margot. She doesn't mention Jamie. Graham walks out in the middle of the night. Elsewhere, Margot admits everything to Jed. Her affair with Brad, her pregnancy, the abortion. Jed snaps and slaps her across the face, then throws her out. With nowhere else to go, Margot finds herself at her brother's again. Her world is collapsing. Kyle urges her to stay quiet and get her shit together. Sophie spirals. She gets drunk and drives. Kyle appears in his truck and forces her to pull over. But when he steps out to confront her, she hits the gas and runs him over. She doesn't flee. Instead, she loads his body, drives to the woods, and prepares to dump him. As she's dragging the body, Margot calls Kyle's phone. Sophie, for some reason, picks up. She says nothing, but her shaky breathing gives her away. Finally, she tosses Kyle's body off a ravine into the water below, disappearing into the darkness.